Hello again. I had another debate with Bella from the Middle English Manuscripts YouTube channel yesterday about critical race theory. I give a link to it above, although since it lasts for an hour and a half, not everybody may wish to watch the entire thing. I have to make a small confession before going any further, and this is that I am something of a student of Marx. In fact, I have an awful lot of Marx and Engels' writings in my bookshelves. I mention this because it helps me spot when some political movement or apparently innocuous group is actually a front for Marxism. The debate with Bella was a perfect illustration of this. Many people who know something about critical race theory assume that it is essentially an anti-racist ideology with the usual vaguely left-wing tendency which such things often have. At any rate, they think that the aim of critical race theory is surely to combat and challenge racism. It's nothing of the kind. Indeed, the followers of this movement do not even think that abolishing racism or challenging it is a particularly important activity. They think it's pointless. Their ideology runs a good deal more deeply than this. At the beginning of the chapter of the book on critical race theory at which Bella and I looked, came a discussion about idealists and materialists. Immediately we know that we are in Marxist territory. For the average person, idealists are lofty-minded souls who have good principles that they stick to, whereas materialists are more down-to-earth people who care only about money and possessions. This is not at all what Marxists and critical race theorists mean by the words. Here is a text of which I am very fond. It's really crucial. It's by Marx and Engels, obviously. I don't know how many of you have heard of the German ideology. It really is the crux of Marxism and Marxist theory. If we turn to the first page, which we can see here, we see that it talks of the opposition of the materialist and idealist outlook. This is crucial to Marxist ideology. Materialism and idealism are opposing forces. For those of you that are interested in philosophy, Hegel was the one that came up or epitomised the idea of idealism. Essentially, most people are idealists. They think that ideas, whether socialism, feminism, racism or democracy, are things which people dream up of their own free will, and then those ideas influence society and culture. So an idea like feminism will come along and people work to it, and then they use the ideology of feminism to change society. For materialists, the case is quite different. Ideas aren't the driving force behind change in society. They believe that it is society itself, the living conditions, economic structure and so on, which bring forth the ideas. In other words, Marx didn't come up with the idea of communism, which then went on to change the world. He didn't dream up an idea and the idea changed things. It was rather that the Industrial Revolution and the society at that time, capitalism, brought forth an opposing view in a historical sense, which then clashed with the prevailing ideology. This is what we mean by dialectical materialism. Ideas are clothed in events and they oppose each other rather like a syllogism and bring forth a new thing, a synthesis. Now, I realise that very few viewers are going to want to hear me raving on about dialectical materialism and the class struggle. I'm not a Marxist, but when I see people talking enthusiastically about the struggle between idealists and materialists, those people almost invariably are Marxists. And this means that instead of debating ideas, they want to revolutionise society. They're not interested in challenging ideas and debating ideas. That's not the point at all. Once you change the economic structure of society and the class base of society, things will happen in a good way automatically. The critical race theorists don't want to set forward an opposing idea to challenge racism. They're not concerned with anti-racism. They want to change the structure of capitalist society so that this in itself will alter human consciousness. It's a bold plan, but I feel that we should know what is really going on before we offer our support to such a revolutionary Marxist ideology. The idea is broached in the chapter at which Bella and I looked that we should aim for equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity. In other words, it's not enough to ensure merely that black people have access to A levels or an opportunity to attend Oxford or Harvard if they do well enough. We should make sure that black people do get as many A levels as white teenagers, that they score as highly in the American Scholastic Aptitude Test, which determines who attends which university, and that they then get as many places at Harvard or Oxford University as would be expected by their population. That is to say, in the United States, 15% of places at medical school should go to African Americans, and in Britain, 5% of places at Oxford and Cambridge universities should be for black people. This, of course, is a thoroughly Marxist view of the matter. The problem is, though, that if we're going to make sure that more black students get into Harvard without the best scores in their examinations, then we're going to have to cut down on the numbers of white students and those of East Asian origin, who happen to be getting top marks in the Scholastic Aptitude Test, which is used to assess those applying. This is, of course, actually happening in America right now, and it's beginning to happen in Britain as well. At Harvard, they're admitting students now on the basis of personality assessments rather than academic record. This means that they now have 15% of admissions set aside for African Americans, because these personality assessments apparently show that black people are more cheerful and friendly than those of East Asian origin, who tend instead to be cowardly and unfriendly. No, I'm not making this up. This is what happens when you use Marxist principles to decide who attends a university rather than just common sense. Harvard discovered that people of Chinese families really do tend to conform to the negative image of the brilliant but cold-hearted Orientals. We think now of Fu Manchu from the older novels and films. They are in fact more unkind, cowardly and unlikable than the rest of us, and do not have such warm personalities. They're not at all the sort of people you'd want to see too many of in a student body. This discovery, which ties in with the worst stereotypes of Chinese people as being crafty and cruel, was made by admission tutors whose job was to assess applications. The exact means by which they discovered these traits is a closely guarded secret. According to the universities which engage in such practices, they're anxious not to reveal too much. As I can well believe, I give a link to an article in the New York Times which covers this awful situation. It's because black applicants tend to have more positive personalities and are kinder and generally more agreeable people that so many are admitted with inferior academic performance to Asian Americans whose applications are rejected because they are less courageous and friendly and cheerful. I dare say that we shall be seeing racial profiling of this kind at British universities before too long. Hideous and racist though it is, this is a logical conclusion once you allow a Marxist doctrine to get hold. Critical race theory and the Black Lives Matter movement are both Marxist fronts dedicated to the destruction of our society as it is currently constituted.